After years of ruling Germany, Adolf Hitler's final solution for the Jews came to fruition during World War II. In the form of the Holocaust, the dictator killed 6 million Jews and some 5 million others for racial, political, ideological, and behavioral reasons. Even more disturbing, among the ones who perished, more than 1 million were children. To understand the unimaginable atrocities committed during this dark era, let's dive into the history of the Holocaust. Opposite to popular belief, anti-Semitism in Europe did not start with Adolf Hitler. Even though the term anti-Semitism wasn't used until the 1870s, there is evidence that people were against Jews long before the Holocaust. For example, the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple in Jerusalem and forced Jews to leave Palestine. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the Enlightenment stressed religious tolerance, and in the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte and other European rulers passed laws that ended restrictions on Jews that had been in place for a long time. Anti-Semitism did not go away, though, and in many cases, it became more about race than about religion. It is not clear where Adolf Hitler's very strong anti-Semitism came from. However, like a lot of anti-Semites in Germany, he thought that the Jews were to blame for Germany's loss in 1918. Soon after the end of World War I, Hitler joined the National German Workers' Party, which later changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or the Nazis. While in prison for treason for his part in the Beer Hall Putsch of 1923, Hitler wrote his autobiography and propaganda book, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. In it, he predicted a general European war that would lead to the extermination of the Jewish race in Germany. Hitler was obsessed with the idea that the pure German race, which he called Aryan, was better than other races and that it needed more Lebensraum, or living space, to grow. In the 10 years after he got out of prison, Hitler used the weakness of his rivals to boost the status of his party and bring it from obscurity to power. On January 30, 1933, he became Germany's chancellor, and after President Paul von Hindenburg died in 1934, Hitler named himself Führer, the most powerful person in Germany. Hitler's worldview was based on two main goals: racial purity and territorial expansion. From 1933 on, these two goals would work together to drive both his foreign and domestic policies. At first, the Nazis reserved their harshest persecution for political opponents, such as communists or social democrats. Dachau, near Munich, was the first real concentration camp. It opened in March 1933, and many of the first people sent there were communists. The Dachau was run by Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the elite Nazi Guard, the Schutzstaffel, SS, and later the head of the German police. He was also in charge of the network of concentration camps that came after Dachau and became the killing grounds of the Holocaust. By July 1933, about 27,000 people were in protective custody in German concentration camps, called Konzentrationslager or KZ in German. In 1933, there were about 525,000 Jews in Germany, which was only 1% of the total population. However, during the next 6 years, the Nazis Aryanized Germany by firing non-Aryans from government jobs, closing down Jewish-owned businesses, and taking clients away from Jewish lawyers and doctors. Under the Nuremberg laws of 1935, anyone with 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents was considered a Jew, while those with 2 Jewish grandparents were called Mischlinge, meaning half-breeds. Under the Nuremberg laws, Jews were singled out and treated badly all the time. This led to Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, in November 1938, when German synagogues were burned and windows in Jewish homes and shops were smashed. About 100 Jews were killed and thousands more were arrested. From 1933 to 1939, hundreds of thousands of Jews left Germany, and those who stayed lived in constant fear and uncertainty. World War II began when Germany invaded the western half of Poland in September 1939, and soon, German police forced tens of thousands of Polish Jews out of their homes and into ghettos, surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. These ghettos, run by Jewish councils, and not only saw a lot of unemployment, poverty, and hunger, but also diseases like typhus, which spread due to a lack of bathrooms. But this was not all there was to the master plan. Starting in the fall of 1939, Nazi officials chose about 70,000 Germans who were in mental hospitals or had physical disabilities to be gassed to death as part of a program called euthanasia. And though it was apparently stopped after a while, from what we know now, the euthanasia program was just a test run for the Holocaust. During the spring and summer of 1940, The German army took over Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. Thus, beginning in 1941, Jews from all over Europe and tens of thousands of Romani people were moved to ghettos in Poland. In June 1941, when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, mobile killing groups called Einsatzgruppen killed more than 500,000 Soviet Jews and other people. Auschwitz, a concentration camp near Krakow, Poland, was used to test ways to kill a lot of people at once. In August of that year, 500 people in charge used the pesticide Zyklon B to kill 500 Soviet POWs. In late 1941, the Germans started sending a lot of people from the ghettos in Poland to the concentration camps. They started with the sick, the old, the weak, and the very young because they were thought to be the least useful. On March 17, 1942, the first mass gassings started at the camp of Belzec near Lublin. Soon after, the Chelmno, Soderberg, Treblinka, Majdanek, and Auschwitz extermination camps saw the same scenes. From 1942 to 1945, Jews from all over Europe were sent to the camps, and the heaviest deportation was seen in 1942 when more than 300,000 people were sent away from the Warsaw Ghetto. The people who lived in the Warsaw Ghetto were tired of being deported, getting sick, and always being hungry. So from April 19 to May 16, 1943, they rose up against the Nazis. In the end, 7,000 Jews were killed, and the other 50,000 were sent to death camps. But the resistance fighters had kept the Nazis at bay for almost a month, and their revolt caused uprisings in camps and ghettos all over Europe that were ruled by Germany. The Nazis tried to hide how the camps worked, but the number of people who were killed made this almost impossible. Eyewitnesses told the Allies about the horrible things the Nazis did nonetheless. They did not bat an eye. This lack of action was probably mostly because the Allies were focused on winning the war at the time. It could also be partly because the news of the Holocaust was met with confusion, denial, and doubt that such horrible things could be happening on such a large scale. More than 2 million people were killed at Auschwitz alone in a way that looked like a large-scale factory operation. A lot of Jewish and non-Jewish prisoners worked at the camp, but only Jews were gassed. Joseph Mengele, who believed in eugenics, went to Auschwitz in 1943 to start his well-known experiments on Jewish prisoners there. He was especially interested in doing medical experiments on twins and under the guise of treating them. He gave them injections of everything from gasoline to chloroform. Because of what he did, people called him the Angel of Death. By the spring of 1945, German leadership was falling apart because of disagreements within the country. Both Göring and Himmler wanted to get away from Hitler and take power. In his last will and political testament, which he wrote in a German bunker on April 29, he blamed the war on international Jewry and its helpers. The next day, he killed himself, and on May 8, 1945, just over a week after this, Germany officially gave up. In the fall of 1944, German forces began evacuating many of the death camps by sending prisoners on guarded marches away from the enemy's front line. These so-called death marches went on until the Germans gave up, and between 250,000 and 375,000 people died because of them. The Holocaust took a long time to heal. Most of the people who lived through the camps couldn't go back home because they had lost their whole families and their non-Jewish neighbors had denounced them. In 1945 and 1946, the Allies held the Nuremberg trials to punish the people who were responsible for the Holocaust. These trials showed how horrible the Nazis were. In 1948, Israel was made because the Allies were put under more and more pressure to give Jews who survived the Holocaust a place to live. Over the next few decades, ordinary Germans had to deal with the bitter legacy of the Holocaust, and starting in 1953, the German government gave money to Jews as a way of acknowledging its crimes. The Holocaust and its causes is a pretty broad topic, but one of the most important lessons it gives us is that the genocide of European Jews was successful, not only because of the state-sanctioned culture of hate and industry of death, but also because of crimes of indifference and conspiracies of silence. We have already seen terrible indifference and lack of action in our own time, which led to the unthinkable genocide in Rwanda. This genocide was unthinkable because it could have been stopped. No one could say we didn't know. We knew, but did nothing, just like we knew about the genocide by attrition in Darfur, but did nothing to stop it. If you don't care or do nothing, you're always on the side of the person who hurt you and never on the side of the person who was hurt. If you don't care about bad things, you simply agree with them.